Welcome to Haunted Syntax. Here, we unravel the darkest stories, the forgotten horrors, and the chilling truths that hide in the shadows of our world. Tonight's story is not a legend. It is not a ghost tale whispered in the dark. It is real. This is the story of Anatoly Moskvin, the human doll maker. Haunted Syntax presents The Human Doll Maker, Anatoly Moskvin Part 1. A quiet genius, Anatoly Yuryevich Moskvin was born on September 1, 1966, in Gorky, now called Nizhny Novgorod, Russia. A gifted linguist and historian, he mastered more than a dozen languages. He was an academic, a writer, and an eccentric scholar who lived surrounded by his vast personal library of tens of thousands of books. To the outside world, he was a brilliant, if unusual, intellectual. But behind his reclusive life, something much darker was unfolding. Part 2, Roots of Obsession. As a child, Anatoly had a disturbing experience. At just 12 years old, he was forced to kiss the cold forehead of a deceased girl during a funeral ritual. That moment left a permanent mark on him, shaping his fascination with death and burial. Over time, this interest grew into an obsession. He wandered cemeteries endlessly, claiming to have visited more than 700 of them. He studied gravestones, recorded burial details, and sometimes even slept inside cemeteries. While others saw him as a harmless eccentric, his fascination was slowly transforming into something sinister. Part 3, The Solo Scholar. Moskvin never married, never had children, and lived with his parents most of his life. He didn't drink, didn't socialize, and instead devoted himself entirely to his work and his odd passions. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, and bookish. They knew little of what went on behind the doors of his apartment. Inside, however, he was not just studying the dead. He was collecting them. Part 4, Discovery of the Macabre. In 2011, police investigating a series of grave desecrations entered Moskvin's apartment. What they found shocked the world. Scattered throughout his home were nearly 30 mummified corpses of young girls and women. But these weren't just bodies. They had been dressed, painted, and posed as dolls. Some sat on chairs, others propped up in corners, and a few were positioned as though they were watching television. To anyone passing by, they might have looked like oversized toys. But up close, they were horrifyingly real. Part 5, Unraveling the Method. Moskvin had spent years perfecting his grim technique. He exhumed the bodies from cemeteries, carefully selecting children he believed were calling out to him. He used salt and baking soda to dry the remains, stuffed their bodies to give them shape, and covered their faces with wax or masks. He dressed them in children's clothes, fitted them with wigs made of real hair, and in some cases, even placed music boxes inside their chests so they would play tunes when touched. His dolls were not creations of fantasy, they were transformed corpses. Part 6, Motive revealed. When questioned, Moskvin insisted he meant no harm. He claimed he felt compassion for the children and wanted to preserve them, to save them from being forgotten underground. He said he hoped one day science, or even magic, would bring them back to life. In his mind, he was not a criminal but a caretaker, keeping these children company until they could live again. But for the grieving families, his actions were nothing less than monstrous. Part 7, The Mother Who Suspected. Some parents had long suspected something was wrong. One grieving mother swore she recognized her missing daughter's face on one of Moskvin's dolls. The doll had the same freckles, the same scar, the same haunting resemblance. Her cries for justice had once been dismissed as grief-driven madness. But when Moskvin's secret was uncovered, her worst nightmare was confirmed. Part 8, The Doll Exhibition. Before his arrest, Moskvin even showed his dolls to acquaintances, who assumed they were harmless, life-sized crafts. Some said the dolls were unsettling but never guessed they were real bodies. To him, these figures were his companions, his family, his silent children. He celebrated birthdays with them, watched television beside them, and spoke to them as if they were alive. The line between reality and illusion had long since disappeared. Part 9, The Raid. When police searched his home, they also found maps of cemeteries, photographs of graves, and detailed notes on the children he had exhumed. It became clear this was not a single act of madness, but a carefully executed ritual that spanned nearly 2 decades. Authorities were stunned. The public was horrified. And the families of the missing children were devastated all over again. Part 10, The dollmaker's fate. Moskvin was arrested, but he was never put on trial. Psychiatric evaluations determined he suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, making him unfit for prosecution. Instead, he was confined indefinitely to a psychiatric institution. Doctors described his condition as deeply disturbed, but without traditional criminal intent. To this day, he remains in psychiatric care, his release continuously denied out of fear of what he might do again. Part 11, The dolls remain. The dolls were removed from his home, but their memory lingers. Investigators and guards who encountered them described hearing whispers at night, or seeing their eyes appear to move. Whether imagination or something more, the dolls carried with them the weight of tragedy, the lost lives of children whose innocence was twisted into a grotesque display. Part 12, The curse lives on. The apartment where Moskvin lived has since been emptied, but locals claim it still feels cursed. Some say they hear children's laughter near the building at night. Others swear they've seen small figures in the windows, even though the place has long been abandoned. Moskvin's story is not just one of crime, it is one of obsession, grief, and the terrifying depths of human delusion. Closing note: this was the story of Anatoly Moskvin, known as the human doll maker. A chilling reminder that monsters are not always violent killers. Sometimes, they are quiet men with good reputations, whose darkness hides in plain sight. Brought to you by Haunted Syntax. If you found this story unsettling, make sure to subscribe to Haunted Syntax for more horror stories and true tales from the shadows. Because some dolls are not made of porcelain. Some are made of the past.